So my first impressions of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre were very strong. The menus and loading screens perfectly embody the feelings of the first film, and this theme just continues on the more you play. There's even an opening crawl that references the events of the original film. There's clearly been a lot of thoughts put into the presentation of the game. I think that's really important. I actually played this game for the first time on stream, so you can go and watch that if you haven't already. Anyway, with that being said, let's get straight into what I thought about the game once I started playing. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I noticed the first major flaw of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre the moment I tried entering the game. So, you press play and you select whether you want to play victims or family, but then you better be prepared to wait, because the game can have you waiting for up to 8 minutes sometimes. There's a 5-minute cooldown on how long it takes you to load into a match, and it can take from 5 seconds to 5 minutes, and then even if it takes 5 minutes, you then got to be dropped into the player selection screen, and then you select which player you want to play as, and then there's to be 3 people selecting which killers you want to play as, and then 4 survivors. This all seems like it'd work fine, but the problem is that you're not forced to ready up unless you've been waiting for 2 minutes, and it's not only that, but the clock starts ticking again from the start if any new players decide to join. Everyone wants to play as the family in this game, evidently, so if you want to play as the family, you could be waiting a long time on the first loading screen, but not a long time on the second loading screen. But if you want to play as a victim, well, if you want to play as a victim, you have a very short loading time to begin with, but when you drop into the match, you could be waiting up to 5 minutes for players to select what perks and what abilities they want to use during the game. This is a problem because you can be killed in the first 30 seconds of this game theoretically, and imagine waiting 8 minutes just in the loading screens, or being killed almost instantly in the first 30 seconds. This could be solved by simply implementing a 1-minute timer as and when all the characters have loaded into the game, because I feel like it would encourage people to select which character they want to play before they come in and have a backup just in case that character's been chosen. The other issue I have with the loading screens is you can't view the tutorials from the loading screens, which doesn't look like it would be a problem, but in a game that explains very little to you when you're actually in the game, I think it's a big problem. I would have loved to scroll through the tutorials, but I wanted to get straight into it. I know there will be players that are more patient than I am, but I think as an average, people don't really want to be viewing half an hour's worth of tutorials before they even jump into the game. People have been looking forward to this for a long time. They just want to go into the game and jump straight in. Anyway, with that being said, let's get on to the more positive parts of this experience, because I think there's far more than the negative. I know it might not have looked like it for the first couple of minutes of this video, but I actually really love this game. Let me explain why. So, for me to explain why I love this game, first I have to explain why it's unique. So I love Dead by Daylight. I'm pretty sure everyone who likes asymmetrical games likes Dead by Daylight, but Dead by Daylight is a very lonely experience if you're playing as the killer. If you're playing as a survivor, it can also be quite monotonous because you're literally just doing exactly the same thing over and over again. And I know you can say that about TCM, but there's far more ways to escape in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre than there are in Dead by Daylight. For example, you could go out the front gates, or you could open the valve gate, or you could unlock the other gate. There's several ways to get out in every map. I think in every map there's at least 3. But moving on, start off in the dark basement. You'll be given the chance to struggle and escape. After that, Leatherface will be with you in the basement. He'll be the only killer that's allowed there until someone's opened one of the doors. But from that moment on, you're in a struggle for survival. It's you and 3 survivors, all looking for the same thing: unlock tools, bone scraps, the occasional medicine as well. Once you've secured these items, you'll have to look for basement exits, and there are generally a few. But once you've unlocked one of those, your objective becomes much more difficult. To find an exit to the outside map, and these outside maps are quite big, quite detailed, and surprisingly good looking for a horror game. And then you'll need to find exactly what you need to open that door, all while escaping the 2 other killers that are now within your reach. What I like about this game is you have a lot more fighting than you do in Dead by Daylight. In Dead by Daylight, the general sense was if you see a killer, you're probably dead. In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you have a bone scrap, you have the ability to fight back. Apart from his Leatherface, because that guy is just too big for you to fight. So the reason that I like this is because I think it encourages a lot more player individuality. Because if you're a victim, generally in games like Dead by Daylight, if you're alone as a victim because everyone else is dead, you are in deep trouble unless you find the hatch. In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you're probably going to be fine. If you know what you're doing at least. And that goes back to the tutorial issues that I talked about earlier, but anyway. I think that the thing that lends to this experience most out of anything else is the atmosphere. Let me explain. I know that it's a bit cringe to say that the best thing about a game is the vibes, but for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the best part of the game really is the vibe. This really does feel like a horror game through and through. Even though it encourages the ability to fight back and the ability to escape, it really is terrifying from the first seconds to the last. That's because of quite a few things all added up. Firstly, the music in this game is amazing. It leaves you constantly on edge, but also keeps your heart pumping because it's frantic and it changes up with every new gameplay change. The second reason is Grandpa. Grandpa is one of the members of the family that's a non-playable character, and the rest of the family members, through collecting blood from pots or from hurting other survivors, will have to feed him blood, and what happens then is Grandpa will cry out. If Grandpa cries out, the rest of the victims have to stay still, because otherwise he'll ping you for every single killer on the map and survivor to see. This effect is strengthened the more that the family feeds him, until Grandpa hits level 5, in which every time he roars, and it's quite frequent because it gets more frequent with every level, you'll be detected even if you're sitting still. That adds a real feeling of urgency to matches, as well as the fact that you're constantly bleeding out the entire time as well, so constant healing is required. It's not as constant as it may seem at first, but you definitely need to heal if you're planning to stay in the match for more than 5 minutes. Anyway, the other reason that this game is so tense is actually because of the new asymmetrical aspect of the game, in that it's 3 killers, not 1. I think that this had the potential to make the game incredibly unbalanced, but it actually doesn't feel too unbalanced. There's always that feeling of being the final victim, and that's a terrifying thought, but even though there's 3 killers, they've balanced the game so that you can always feel like you have a chance, and you can always hide if you don't feel like you have a chance. That's because there's massive patches of grass and bushes all around every map, and they really help to aid you in your survival. It's exhilarating as you finally exit and escape the ranch, leaving all the killers in the dust and seeing Leatherface do his chainsaw dance at the end of every match. Let's move on to why I think this game will survive a long time to come. The first reason I think this game will survive is because for the first time it's equally satisfying to play as both victim and family. This is because the balance of the game feels so solid, and as a family member you feel in control but not overly powerful, so it's always a chase and it's always exciting. And as a victim, it always feels like you're under threat, but it never feels like you have no chance. I think that's crucial, because it needs to be fun to play both sides of an asymmetrical horror game in order for player counts to sustain. But I think that the second reason why I think it will survive will play an even bigger part in that, and that's the surprisingly deep metagame system. In Dead by Daylight there was a massive perk system, and it basically defined the way the game works and the way it survived. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is similar. There's a massive skill tree, and it all goes into unlocking new stats and new perks. You can actually upgrade your character's individual stats in this game, and you can redistribute them for free whenever you like, and it works the same with perks and the skill tree. Each character gets 3 perks and a main ability, so there's even more choices to buff your playstyle and play each character the way that you want to play it. Say you enjoy playing Connie and you like to escape and you like to be dexterous, or you can upgrade it so that your lock doors don't break, or they have less of a chance of breaking anyway. Or say you enjoy playing Sunny and you enjoy that survivor sense and you enjoy being quick, you can upgrade his speed, or you can even give him different abilities that will buff his speed after that as well. All in all, there's a massive sense of choice as how you play every single character in the game, and the more you play, and the more you survive or the more you kill, the more options that you unlock to change your killer or your survivor into your exact preferred playstyle. That's why I really enjoy this game, and I think it's why a lot of other people will enjoy this game as well. Overall, I'd say that I definitely recommend the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think there's some changes that need to be made, such as I think that in a few weeks, maybe as people have gotten used to the game, the problem with having no skill-based matchmaking is that it will really start to put you in with characters that are far too advanced for the newcomer that you probably will be if you're picking this up in a few weeks anyway. That's why I'd say that there needs to be some aspect of skill-based matchmaking included in the game for all levels of play, I'd say. Because unlike Call of Duty, this is a game that really lives and dies by how big the skill gap is in between killers and victims. I don't like skill-based matchmaking as much as the next person, but here it would really be used. Also, there's a tutorials thing, but I've already gone on about that, so let's leave that in the past. Anyway, I would say though, after saying all that, I think this game will survive for a long time to come. I think people just have too much appetite for this sort of game, especially people who love the first classic film in the series. There's a lot to be said about how much love has been put into this game and making it feel as authentic as humanly possible, because I think a late game almost always lives and dies by how much the producers and the developers love the source material. So that's my review of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I recommend it, but let me know if you've hopped in and what you think of it. Do you prefer playing as a killer with a victim? Let me know down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe, and with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.